Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
Welcome to Stress-Free Living. It's so good to be with you. I'm Ray Samich, and I'd like to introduce you to my longtime radio colleague, co-host of this show, and my dear spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray, wonderful. And happy birthday to you, although it's
thank you.
belated. And welcome back.
Thank you. And I want to welcome all of our guests. We have a number of people joining us on our Zoom call here today, as well as people we know listen by way of internet stream, by radio, on our YouTube channel, which is, you can find that at Stress Free Living Radio on the YouTube system. However you're listening and joining us or watching us, we are so grateful that you are with us. Hope that we can add value to your life. Ratanjit, I want to talk about family today. And it has become a very important topic to me because I believe in the value of a family. I believe in the fact that we all need people around us that we can communicate with, that we can comfort when they need it, that they can comfort us when we need it, that there's a real wisdom to the idea that you have parents that are teaching children, that are guiding them, that are shaping them to become the next generation of leadership and spreaders of love and knowledge to the world. I believe in the family concept that says that, the old lead the young and value the responsibility to be able to keep the world going in a positive way. And that's not happening right now for a lot of reasons. Some of them are political, some of them are environmental, some of them are attitude-wise. I think there's a certain amount of selfishness that's in play here with people not wanting to bother with children. There seems to be a lot of reasons, but ultimately, the fact is right now that in this world, the average woman today will only bear 0.7 of one child. And if you just look at it purely mathematical, right now, that means that we're going to become extinct if that doesn't change, because we're not even producing as many children for the future as we have in the world today. So I know I just threw out a whole bunch of things, but I have a real concern, and I wanted to talk about it with you today. What do you think about today's family being redefined? Are we going in the right direction?
Oh, it's a very vast topic. It depends on how you want to handle it. And I think before we go any further, we have to define a family.
Okay.
A family can be defined in three categories. We call a family generally my brother, my cousin, my father, so they are all blood relatives. We have to have the blood relationship. And then the family, basically, we start with somebody who we don't even know at one time, our spouse. She's not related to her, or he's not related to basically, they are strangers. So that relationship is love relationship, heart. So there is a family which is formed through heart. So similarly, we can find a friend and we love them and we dearly, and that becomes more important than family. And there is another thing which we never really consider. We are basically constructing our family based on this human shell, human body, blood. The real us, which we don't even know, real us, which enlivens this human body, is the real us. The force, the universal force, universal power, which brings life in this human body. Otherwise, all the organs are there when we die. So it's not, when we consider that aspect of us, then every living human being is our family, because they have the same power enlivening them. Right? So if we really want to have our true family, then we have to first understand who truly we are. If we mistake ourselves as our human body, we are going to focus on the wrong family. We are limiting our family. We are restricting our family. And the consequence of that thinking is what we see around us. We basically have animosity and greed and fear and ego, which is basically given to us as the software from the human body. Human body basically only knows inherently it has only certain life. You cannot have a human body more than certain time. It doesn't matter how wise you are, doesn't matter how rich you are, how influenced you are, whether you are a medical doctor or you are a prince or you are a king. You have limited lifespan of this human body. So this human body, in this human body mode, our life is very limited. And when we live in this real us mode, the power which enlivens us mode, we become free of our fear, greed, ego, lust, all those things, because they are not there in the power which enlivens us, because it never dies. It doesn't have the fear. It doesn't have the greed. It doesn't have the ego. So when we start living in that mode, we basically then become pure love. And then all our relationships are formed because of love. All our family is basically love-based, right? I said too many things.
No, you didn't. Not at all. But I do agree. And I think anybody who listens to this program on a regular basis understands what you're saying in terms of ultimately the same divine that's within you is within me and within everybody else. And so we are a family in that way. And I definitely do not disagree with that. But I am looking at not, respectfully, not really talking about that relative to what we do consider families in the non-spiritual way, but in the worldly way. And whether people accepted the fact that we are divine, the same divine family or not, we've seen a deterioration of what is considered the worldly family. The other two types that you refer to, the blood relations, where you actually are surrounded by, you know, 3 or 4 brothers and sisters, or where you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 children, the blood family has lessened dramatically. And it's happened dramatically within my lifetime. I mean, when I was a child, it was not unusual for all of my friends to be one of 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 kids. I mean, that was back in the 50s and 60s, that was very commonplace to have very large families. And we've seen that now where it's less than one. Okay, there's many families that don't have any children, and there's many only child situations, and maybe 1 or 2, you know, at the most. So that's the blood relations. And then when you say the love relations, um, and I understand where you're at, and you introduced that concept to me some time ago, where you said it's as much value as we place on family blood. When those families start, they're 2 people coming together that aren't even allowed to be in the same bloodline. You pointed that out to me many years ago, and I was intrigued by that. You're not allowed to marry a spouse that is in your bloodline. So it's the exact opposite of blood for that type of a starting of a family. And I'm not opposed. This is not a political show to oppose gay marriages and those types of things. We're not going there today. If there's love and they form a family, that's still beautiful in my mind for this value of this show. But we don't even have that. We don't even have enough of the blood relation families, and we don't have enough of the love relation families right now. And whether you accept that there's a divine family or not, we see that there's a deterioration of blood families and love families. Do you agree that that we have a problem with those two right now in terms of lessening of those?
Basically, that deterioration is caused by remaining in the human body mode alone, not realizing who we are, because your selfless love, your caring, your empathy, your compassion, your love is right now contaminated by your fear, greed, ego, and lust. And we love somebody when we even your own son or daughter, we disown them when they are not listening to us, they are doing something, we don't give them freedom. They are captive. So what we call our family, this explanation, understanding our problems given to us through this structure, we have to realize that is only because of we live, think, and work in the human body mode, which is always contaminated by the idea, mindset of what is in it for me. So when you find your child is not fulfilling my need, you don't need them. You disown them. And similarly, the children disown parents. They put them into the retirement homes because they have no use for them. In fact, the younger people have no use for the older people. They want them to get out of their life. That is, again, basically controlled and dictated by what is in it for me. It's all controlled by our human body mode. Until we live the true us all, whether you talk about the family problem or other problems, they're all originating from the fact that we are living in the human body mode. Right?
Why is this happening so much worse today? Why is this problem? I mean, again, I think the difference between understanding the, and I'm calling it the divine family, but you know what I mean, that the fact that we realize that we are all from one, okay, and that the same one is in you and is in me. That's always been there. That idea and reality compared to the traditional family has always been there. Why is it so pronounced today that we are more, and I think a big part of this is selfishness, that there's so many people today that just don't want to bother with children. They just don't have time for them. They just don't have, they don't want to take the money and instead of doing things with the money for children, they want to do it for themselves. And there's a lot of other reasons too. I don't want to just say it's that. But why is that problem today that has caused literally the the lessening of children to the point of going on a extinction path? I mean, at our worst right now, unless this gets turned around, we are on a path of extinction in terms of humanity. Now, I don't think it'll come to that, but we're actually on a negative point. For everybody that dies, we don't have somebody else being born on a 1-to-1 ratio. Why has that never happened before? What's the difference for that than the way it was 10, 20, 30, 100 years ago?
If you go back 100 years ago, our technology was not that developed. There are not distractions. So we had more time, and the religions were more predominant. And we were told in the religious temples or church or synagogue to fear from God, fear of God. And because of that fear, we would restrict ourselves from doing certain things. Now with this technology, which is God, the religion has become less and less in our life, and we basically are more controlled by what is in it for me. We were still controlled by what is in it for me before, but we were afraid. So again, we were in the human body mode, controlled by fear and greed. We were going to church and synagogue, and we were doing good things because we were told if you do good things, you'll go to heaven. If you do bad things, you go to hell. So that is the fear and greed scenario. So we were controlling the masses again by fear and greed. And then we had at that earlier, democratic governance was less in many countries. They were dominated by kings and they were again fear. So because we are now facing freedom, and when you are given freedom in the human body mode, we are still controlled by fear, greed. So nothing has changed. It has become more dominant. That mindset of what is it in it for me has become more dominant, and doing these things again and again has become a habit. So before we judge anything, our mind says, no, what is the use of this? What good are you going to get from it? That is the question we ask. We are always looking for the benefit in everything we do. Benefit basically for me. So it's in the human body mode. Doesn't matter whether we are 100 years back or whether we are now. We are always in the bad place. Eventually, it will never give us the ultimate happiness and ultimate uh, uh, harmony in our society. We will always be fighting against each other, right?
You brought up a lot of interesting points. We need to go to a break. When we come back, there's so many different branches of the tree that we can go down now. And it'll also, it's one of my favorite parts is that we interact with our Zoom guests and get their feedback and their questions before we continue on with the show. But it seems my quick take on what you just shared is that this problem always was there, but it was kind of masked. We were having so many children and there were so many, things still happening. We didn't realize that maybe these core mistakes were still in play. The store greed, the core greed and the core fear and ego were still there. But if families were 3 and 4 and 5 kids, you didn't see it at play. Now that we have reduced the number of children and we have lessened the number of families, it is vastly apparent that there's serious problems that have been perhaps masked in the past. We're going to come back and talk about this in much more detail and try to figure out, is redefining the family a good thing? Is there a way that we can change some of the trends that literally have us on the path to extinction? This is stress-free living, and this is a stressful topic. So we hope that we can address it fully when we come back. Stay with us. All right, everybody, real quick, if anybody has some thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. Love to take your direction on this, your lead.
I feel initially in about 50 years back, our livelihood was more on agriculture. And agriculture needed at that time not machinery but hands. And that was the way of prosperity. Now it has changed into, with the advent of money and commercialization and capitalism, we have changed the way we live and the way everything is. The education and other things, we are giving more stress. So it is difficult for people to raise children also.
Very interesting point. We will bring that up. Thank you. Anybody else have a thought of why this is happening or a way out of it? Or is everybody okay with it? Any thoughts? Okay, we got everybody puzzled like me. Okay, we got a few seconds left if anybody has a question.
We confuse everyone.
Yeah. And I started out confused. All right. I wonder how many times you wish me happy birthday over the 30 years of this show, Ratanjit. I was thinking about that when you said it on the air. I bet you've done that almost the 30 years.
Ray, the only thing I was thinking is that necessarily bad in terms of smaller families, less use of the earth, that sort of thing. And I think as your other viewer pointed out, that, again, when you had a farm and it was an agricultural community, you had to have kids to work the farm, and we're in a technological era, and you don't need as many kids to take care of your family and create, jobs, that sort of thing. And I think it was very different when you needed people to work the farm or the family business.
Gotta go, doctor. I'm sorry. We are back on Stress-Free Living. Thank you so much for being with us. Ratanjit Sandhi and yours truly, Ray Samich, with you today, talking about redefining the family, trying to get a grasp, an understanding of why things have changed so much within just the last 50, 60 years, going from an average of 4 or 5 children in a family to currently less than 1 on an average. And redefining what makes a family. Is it a man and a woman? Is it a husband and a wife? It used to be traditional marriage was predominant. Today it's not. Traditional marriage and in terms of men and women living together, in terms of same-sex marriages, in terms of single family or single parents. Just so many differences in the family today than it was, say, 50 years ago. Ratanjit, one of the things that a couple of our Zoom guests pointed out was that maybe the big families were there because of the need before technology, before big equipment, farm equipment and things, since most of the countries were agricultural to start, before they became industrial, before they became today more of a technological based society. We needed workers. We needed a farm to have a lot of workers, and where better to get the people working the farm than to give birth to them in a family and teach them how to work the farm. And could it be that? I mean, could it be that was the essence of a big family for generations, was because it was a practical way of getting laborers?
So both the scenarios are basically byproduct of what is in it for me. So when you needed more hands to help you, you had bigger family. But they were all your needs. And now
Right.
you have so many things to enjoy. Why you want to share with so many kids? And to bring so many kids is a responsibility. So it is, families are shrinking. And again, it is all what is in it for me. And we were before also in the human body mode, and we were controlled by religions and government and our conditions, and we have limited help from technology. And now we have more technology and supposedly a democratic government, which is again highly corrupt because we are buying influences. We are buying, this in our country, US, the corruption is legalized. We cannot give direct money to the politician, but I can give it to a lobbyist. I can have a lobbyist, and lobbyists can give the money and buy the influence. So ultimately, the end result is we are our leaders are part in it for what is in it for me. They join politics not to serve the human race, but to enrich themselves. So this phenomena doesn't matter which aspect of our society, whether it is the family or government or people, we are all basically all, until we get out of this human body mode and get into the oneness mode and control our brain computer, which is attached to us, is controlled by divine force, which is free of fear, greed, lust, and ego. We will always be looking for why this is happening. Doesn't matter which area you explore, Ray.
you said this is a vast topic, and it is. It may be one of the most complicated, convoluted topics we've ever discussed on this show. But you said a few minutes ago that even when we were having then the 10 kids, the farmer was having 10 kids with his wife in a traditional marriage, that was really perhaps not as much for the kids as it was for the owner of the farm to have a free workforce. Okay. So it really was like my kids are my workers, and this is good for me, so I'm going to do it. And that mentality was passed on because in the early days, most of those kids went on to have their farms and do the same thing. So I see how that was, could have very well been driven in a me, myself, I mentality. But there seems to be something else in play as well, though, and it's values. And you mentioned earlier how religion was there, and maybe it was a fake value, maybe it was a pseudo value of based on fear and not really based on legitimacy. But the values seem to have shifted as well. We seem, I thought we had a moral responsibility to teach our children, to leave a legacy. I was raised on the idea that you don't do it for yourself, you do it for your children. You make sacrifices for your children, and that's a good thing. You spend money educating children instead of spending money going on vacation by yourself or having exotic dinners. You put that money into something meaningful to raise the future leaders of the world. And it seems that those values have shifted to me. Oh, or are you saying those values were never really there? That this is just exposing the fact that these were pseudo values? What do you think?
The values basically are two categories. Value given to us by our parents, values given to us by our school, our education, by our society, by our religion. And these values remained borrowed. Somebody is telling you. They are always attached to with, if you do this, you will be successful. You will be a good person. Either they are incentivized by ego or our fear or our greed. And those values, you will always trade them. Your price may be different. You will not lie for $1,000, or you may not lie for $10,000. You may lie for $100,000. You may lie for $1 million. So your price is they are not true values. But the true values only available to us when we discover our true self. And the values you don't teach when you are practicing oneness. I see the same universal force which is enlivening you and which is enlivening me. So I don't lie to you. There is no incentive left because you are the same. So truth happens. And when you are seeing the divinity present in others, your incentive to serve without getting a trophy or an award is there. So serviceability, compassion, love, all those values which is given to us by our society, and whenever you practice them, you are given trophy or award to sustain them, because you have to feed your ego to sustain them. And when you are in oneness mode, when your brain is controlled and driven by the universal power in you, there is no reason for you to lie, or there is unconditioned compassion, love, and care. So the true values can only happen once you discover who you are, right?
All of that makes so much sense. And it's ultimately the solution. Every time you say words like that, I think anyone who listens or watches this says, you got something there, Ratanjit. That makes perfect sense. If you're operating in that mode, then many of the problems that we discuss today or in other shows disappear. They just no longer are in play because you're doing things for the right reason. What I have a difficult time putting my arms around is that reality was there 50 years ago as much as it's there today. And I don't unfortunately think more people realize it today. And I don't think necessarily fewer people realize it today. I don't think that the reality of the real us overall in the world, especially in developed countries, has really changed significantly in terms of more people grasping it or more people not accepting it. So my point is that if we can take that aside for a moment and just look at how we function in the world, why has it gone so wrong over the last 50 years? Why have we become more of a me society today than we were 50 years ago? Why are we more selfish? Why are we more greedy? Why are we less patient with others today than we were 50 years ago?
If you go back 100 years, we had more time, right?
True.
Because we were not occupied by this cell phone looking at the messages or computer or this and entertainment and these things. So once a while, this question would pop in your mind. Who am I? What is the purpose of this life? When you attend a funeral, you wonder, this person has so much influence, so much money. So has he taken anything with him or with her? So those questions would definitely once a while would pop up in your mind. And you would explore these things, and somehow you would find you have more chance of relating to your true self than today. And that is, and today's, there is, if you leave somebody for 1 hour to do nothing, that is the biggest punishment. Because we cannot stay without getting entertained or doing something. Loneliness is the highest in our society. Loneliness is not because of absence of loved one around you. Loneliness only happens by having the absence of love within you. And the true love cannot happen until you find who you are. Otherwise, we are always looking for what is in it for me. And again, we are not run by our knowledge we have talked about in these shows. We are run by our habits. So once we get caught in this habit of thinking into what is in it for me. I can't think of anything else. So we are enslaved by these habits of fear, greed, insecurity. We have seen there are people who worry a lot. This becomes a habit to them. They constantly worry. Similarly, there are people who are so afraid. They are afraid of doing anything new. There are people who are so greedy. In spite of having millions of dollars in their bank account, they live poorly. So these are habits which make you slave for life. And those habits are given to us by our fear, greed, and insecurity, lust, and ego. Right?
Ratanjit, again, you said so many different things there that we could talk about, but what really touched me there is a very, very astute observation. We are so preoccupied today with technology, with being busy, we can't, you watch, and the younger people are worse, but I'm bad at it as well. We check our phones constantly. We check for messaging. We check for news developing. We check for our areas of interest. We barely have enough time for conversations because we're checking on data and updates, and most of which has no value, meaningless, really. We're so preoccupied with stuff today that we rarely have a chance to be alone with ourselves. We rarely have an opportunity. We have all these ways, I used to find the moments before going to sleep a thought process, a relaxing thought process to kind of wind down. And today I'm so exhausted when I hit the bed, I don't even get that anymore. But I know that many people have all kinds of ways of getting to sleep, whether it's listening to certain music or certain noises, sounds, whatever it might be, or they take medicine, they take some kind of help sleep aids to get to sleep early. It just seems that overall we try almost to eliminate those opportunities to be alone. We almost say, I don't want to do that. Maybe I'm afraid of what I'm going to think of in those moments. So I want to keep my brain constantly cluttered and moving with, in the big picture, are things that really don't matter as much as asking some really true, harsh, meaningful questions. That makes sense. It does make sense to one of the biggest differences, the way it was 50 or 100 years or today. There used to be a lot of time without technology just to think, just to explore who am I and why am I here and what happens when I die. I'm almost thinking that we don't want to have those thoughts today. Many of us prefer not to take reality and think about it. You think there's something there?
Yeah, what happens is that when we started getting technology one after another, so we thought we'll find the answer why we are here.
Oh, yeah.
We'll find the answer of, who am I through technology. So suddenly our brain migrated from this scriptures to technology and looking for solution. And suddenly technology made us slave of things. So that question was completely forgotten.
Right. Right. We need to take a break, Ratanjit, and come back and try to wrap this up. A very complex topic. We're asking a lot more questions, perhaps, than than giving solutions, but we'll see if we can come up with a few before we take the show out. Please stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment. Kai has joined us. Good to have her on board. Anybody else have a quick thought on the topic before we finish it up today? Anybody have a thought? Now's a good time. Brian, thank you for sharing the chat message. I loved the idea of the value, so we put that in. Nope, I guess nobody. Wow, that's unusual.
Sahil, generally you have a question.
Yeah.
You're always good
surprising.
for a thought. Go ahead.
I'm just really enjoying the conversation. And firstly, belated happy birthday to you, Ray. And
Thank you. Appreciate it.
secondly, at the onset of the show, you really defined the misconception, or cleared the misconception rather, that blood is thicker than water. And after that, like everything just started make sense. So I think I agree with everything. I really don't have a question. It's just that if you could maybe throw some light on what's a good way to spend time with your family, maybe. Because for some people, it might be doing a barbecue, it might be having a dinner together, but what would be like really valuable way of spending time with your family?
It's not crazy. Maybe that's a good way to wrap it up. We only have a few minutes, and maybe we could talk about how we can improve a family situation. That's a good thought. Thank you. All right, because I don't know where to go with this, Ratanjit. We're not really solving the problem today. The family has been redefined by our world, and maybe we touch back on what it should be defined as. We are back on Stress Free Living. Ray Samich, Ratanjit Sandhi with you. Thanks so much for being with us here today, interacting with some of our Zoom guests in between. And if you'd like to be a member of our Zoom audience for a future show, you can check out the link for that at our YouTube channel, which is Stress Free Living Radio. Stress Free Living Radio on a YouTube channel gives you the link, and you can join us live as part of our conversation before, during, and after the show. Ratanjit, we only have a few minutes left, and I'd like to review a little bit about what we've talked about. Most importantly, your definition of the family, because that's the title, Redefining the Family. You're very clear on the fact that we're all family, right? That you and I and our Zoom guests and everybody listening and watching today and everybody in the world comes from the same one and has the same one within each of us. And that's the reality. That's the real family that we should have always been defining. Is that a clear summary of your belief on that?
You know, there's another way to look at it. At this, we have two sides of us. We can give control of our brain, our computer. So we can even make the human body as the CEO, or we can make the divine force which is enlivening us as the CEO. The human body is corrupt, is part in selfish motive of what is in it for me, is contaminated by fear, greed, insecurity, lust, and ego. So if you give control of running our life by this human body, and brain is the computer, which is this human body operates to give instruction, we'll be compromising our entire life. We will never be happy. And if we give control to the honest, uncontaminated CEO, the force, the power which enlivens us, then everything falls in place. Now, the question is, you cannot change that suddenly because we have habits. So the only way we can change the human race is by giving the new coming generation, younger generation, from childhood, this wisdom of who they are and giving them the habit of living in oneness. And in the process, working with them, we may change. And unless that happens, the society, the human race is doomed. Sooner or later, we're going to have a fuse of nuclear power and everything will be done. So we have the reason that we have limited life, and this life is again coming back into a child, and child has no data when the child comes on this earth. So we can give the right data, right understanding of who they are, and having them form their habits, which are cultivated by this data of they are the divine force, and the family is everyone they come across. So they have to be kind to everyone they come across. They have to be truthful to everyone they come across. They have to be serving to everyone they come across. And in this process of teaching our children, we have to also practice that, because children only copy your habits. So you have to, as parents, change your habits to cultivate these things, and the new generation would eventually change the entire human race. Right?
Ratanjit, we've talked so much about the fact that many people have had children, and even though it on the outside appears like they've done that in a loving, giving way, it may very well have been so that they say, I have my children. These are my possessions. They're going to work the farm for me, or they're going to make me proud of them, or they're going to do things that, tie back to my ego. Do you think that what you just talked about, teaching our children the real scenario, the reality of our existence, of our oneness, do you think that that is our responsibility? Does every one of us have a responsibility to have a child or more than one, and instill this knowledge in them, this reality in them at an early age so that they develop the habits corresponding to that? Is that really the purpose of children, as opposed to giving birth to my possessions?
So when you think of creating a new generation, then you have incentive to have children. You are not having them as your possession, but you are seeing them as the new society. And then the society would be formed by inculcating in them the right understanding of who they are and making them live that paradigm of oneness. And suddenly, you cannot change the society by making laws. You cannot change the society by punishing people. We cannot change the society by giving them more awards or trophies. You cannot change the people by giving them PhD or whatever. You can only change the society by changing the mindset of the coming generation. And in the process, you would also change, because you have to have that understanding clearly in your mind. And while you are working with the children, you are operating in the oneness mode. You will still be operating in the human body mode because that is your habit. But when you are dealing with your children, because you are bringing the new generation for the society, and that is the only way, and you will have incentive to have more than one child.
With that, we need to go, Ratanjit. Thank you so much for some really broad thinking thoughts and conversations today. We want to thank all of our guests for all of the input that they gave us, and mostly we want to thank you for listening and being a part of today's show. We hope that with some different thoughts, we have added a lot of value to your life. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you again real soon. All right, we are clear and now open to have your conversation with you, hear from you and your thoughts and ideas. Feel free to open your mics and share.
But Sudeep, we never hear from you.
Anybody, go ahead. Anyone who would like to share a thought?
Sahil, you have something to say, right?
We hope.
Not really, no. I quite agree with all the points made today. I'm just here for to hear what everyone's thoughts are.
Okay.
So your question, how to spend time with family, whether we do a barbecue or we watch a movie or spend time with them, basically have this clear discussion of who we are. Try to understand that. As a consequence of that is that you will have your mind begin to operate in that paradigm because you are constantly discussing that.
That's
and
great.
while you are discussing, you can cook the barbecue. While you are discussing, you can have all those goodies.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We can have the added entertainment as well as some really valuable talk. And I'm sure the elders would really love having this chat too. So thank you.
I see Sana behind you. Hi, Sana.
Yeah, she is hiding up right at my left shoulder.
I really am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
It was Ray's birthday, I think.
Happy birthday, Ray.
Oh, thank you. Yesterday, but thank you so much.
The planet
Yes.
is blessed to have you.
Oh, you're very sweet. Thank you. We're blessed to be with you.
Yeah. The best point made today for me was the point of self-love, that loneliness won't be there if one finds love within oneself. That's really an amazing point.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a thought today? It was a deep conversation. It's going to take a little while, I think, to digest it all.
Yeah,
Dr.
everything
Jagjeet?
is fine. Everything is fine. But I still feel the change of evaluation and value system of individuals and the society that has led to basically having less children also, along with the non-thinking about oneness. We have become more and more selfish and more material oriented, all of us.
Yeah.
The value system has been missing, and since the value system is missing, going missing, the sort of the family get-togethers and those also have the actual love between those has also diminished. Am I clear about it? Because of materialism, we are the selfishness, as Ratanjit Singh has said, that has created sort of a difference is that I should be look for myself rather than for the family or for the society.
You only look for family because if family, my children is there, they're going to take care of me when I grow old.
Right, right, right,
So what is in it for me is running the show.
right. I
Brian
agree.
is still having, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish up.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And happy
So
birthday, Ray. Maybe late.
Brian has been having technical issues. He worked on those before we started the show. He still couldn't get it. So he's chatting. If anybody sees those chat messages, oh, actually, they're coming only to me. You can make those to everyone in the future, Brian, too. That might be better. But he wrote these educational changes and separation of values. A Mimi society is about satisfaction now and living for the moment. And then he also said, it seems that forces are breaking up the family unit. The internet has confused the family and brought us separation. Community is falling apart because of this change. I think we call it the internet. I think it's just part of the technology. Like you said, Ratanjit, we're so preoccupied with technology today that it has confused the family. It has brought a separation of people. I've shared this story before. My son was a teacher 17 years, and he said he would monitor cafeteria, the lunch during cafeteria, and he said there was no talking between the kids. They were all on their phones, texting each other, even next to each other or across the table from each other. They feel more comfortable texting than actually conversing. And to me, this is just, I mean, I'm a natural talker. I know that, but I am so much more comfortable in a one-on-one vocal, visual communication than I am in texts. But I think that's part of, the lack of effective communication, and I think that there is a breakdown there of relationships because of those types of technological changes. So I think there's a lot of reasons for it, but I still think it's a problem. I just don't like where this is going,
All right.
personally.
If you see two people talking to each other, and basically their talk will consist of three things. Either they're basically going to complain about, oh, this happened to me, and this happened to my family, or this. Basically, they are looking for sympathy. And the second thing is they're complaining about government or society and indirectly making them feel better. Here, and or they are talking about something. So this whole talk is fear, greed, and ego, or they are boasting about what they have done. So in this entire conversation, both parties are not concerned about making a difference. So our entire moment of life is run by what is in it for me. You can fragment it, complain about this and that, but ultimately, if you go to the bottom of this is what it is happening. And a lot of us will say, that's fine, and that pretty soon you want to go back to your original mindset, because that is what is your habit, your comfort zone. So what I'm saying makes sense, but this remains as a talk, and pretty soon everyone who is listening to this show is going to go back to their own cocoon or doing the same thing. Nothing is going to change.
Well, I think it's a little more likely to change if we don't like where we're going. And maybe that just moves the meter just a fraction, but I think if enough people look around them and say there's problems here that are not going to have, it's not going to end well.
We are going to find blame based on our ego. Either we are going to blame either the government or the environment or the politician or the technology or somebody. Blame is us, which we are never
Right.
going to blame.
It's not my fault.
Yeah. So until you give the medicine where the problem is not going to cure it.